Welcome to another vlog. This week's topic is access to services and equipment. So I want to talk a little bit about that in this week's vlog, specifically my experiences accessing services and equipment as a person with a disability living in Nova Scotia. Now this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, so if I say anything that I shouldn't, I don't mean to. I'm not trying to trample on anyone's toes. I just want to give people a good idea of what my experiences have been to help educate people, because that's what the whole purpose of this blog is. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my experiences accessing services, particularly attendant care services. As a person with Duchenne muscular dystrophy who has very little mobility and physical strength, I rely on other people to do pretty much anything physical for me. So I have attendants who come in to provide me with personal care every day and every evening. Now, personal care and attendant care is very expensive, so I get funding from the government to pay for those services, in this case the government of Nova Scotia. Now, the funding's very limited, so I only get a certain number of hours of funding each month. I believe it's 300 hours a month. So I have to do a very good job of managing the funds to make sure that I have enough money in the account to pay my attendants each month. When I first went into the self-managed care program, which is where I get the funding from the government and manage my own attendant care, I had to start up a sole proprietorship. And the government in Nova Scotia sends the money to that sole proprietorship, and then I use that to pay my attendants' wages and any other costs associated with the attendant care. And this has really helped improve my independence, which is good. But the system in Nova Scotia has its flaws and could definitely be improved. There are some provinces that have much better systems, namely Ontario and Alberta, and I think Nova Scotia needs to look at modeling their system off those provinces a bit more. And I mean, there are initiatives in place that and legislation being developed to help change that, but it's still a ways from becoming a reality. So I have some pet peeves which I want to talk about the attendant care system here in Nova Scotia. For one thing, I have to, after I receive the funding and pay my attendants' wages, I have to pay deductions, remittances, and things like that to the federal government, to the CRA, to cover my attendants' wages. Now, in some provinces, these deductions are already taken out before you get the funding, but in Nova Scotia, you have to do it yourself. So you're getting funding from one jurisdiction, and then you're paying money to another jurisdiction. Seems kind of silly. In addition to that, they have me do these things called quarterly financial reports. Basically, the purpose of that is for me to show that I'm using the funding the way I'm supposed to and not using it to go out and buy a new yacht or something like that. Now, this is a bit of a pet peeve for me because it makes something that's supposed to be about giving me independence, the independence to live my life the way I choose and to manage my attendant care, and it makes it into a hassle. There's all this red tape and bureaucracy that I have to deal with just so that I can live my day-to-day life. And I know it's not their intention that you're guilty until proven innocent. You have to send in this report to show that you're using the funding the way you are, and unless you do that, they suspect that you might not be doing what you're supposed to. And like I said, I know that's not the intention, and I don't mean to trample on anyone's toes, but that's kind of the impression it sort of gives. Now, on a positive note, I have learned a lot of things from the self-managed care system, namely how to run my own business, how to manage finances, and how to manage employees. And that's given me the confidence to do things like, for example, start Squeaky Wheel Productions and start this YouTube series. Now, another thing that I've struggled to access is equipment. Nova Scotia does not provide any funding for medical equipment. Some provinces do, but Nova Scotia does not. And that's not good, because not only is medical equipment essential so that people with disabilities can live independent or functional lives, it's also very expensive. My wheelchair, for example, that I'm sitting in, my power wheelchair, was $30,000. And because the government of Nova Scotia provides no funding for that, we had to get all of the funding from insurance and local organizations. And that takes a lot of time, so it took about a year for me to get all the funding for my wheelchair. And I need this wheelchair because without this, I'd have no mobility and I'd be bedridden. And a lot of people think that wheelchairs are one size fits all. So when you tell them that, oh, your wheelchair's $30,000, they wonder, well, why do you need such an expensive wheelchair? Well, there's a couple of reasons for it. I mean, for one thing, there's not as big of a market for power wheelchairs as there is for cars, for example. Not as many people need them. And so that's one of the reasons why they're so expensive. It's simple economics. But a lot of it also has to do with the fact that chairs aren't one size fits all. If you go online, you'll see that a lot of power chairs start at about $8,000. That's the starting price. But because a wheelchair needs to fit your body, because I'm sitting in my wheelchair for about 14 hours a day, I need to be comfortable. So I have features on the chair that allow me to stay comfortable. I don't have any mobility, so I can't reposition myself in my chair if I'm not comfortable. So to help with that, I have features on my chair like tilt and recline, which I can use to make myself comfortable if I'm not sitting in a good position in my chair. And this is important because it not only allows me to stay comfortable for several hours, but it also ensures that blood flow gets to all of my extremities and I don't get any skin sores like ulcers. I myself have never had an ulcer, thank God, but I know people who have, and I know that they're very serious, and they've spent many months in the hospital, and it's led to a lot of other medical issues. So it's not something that I want. I also have a feature on my chair called elevation, which allows me to raise up so that I can reach things like light switches or things on high shelves, which is very helpful. And my wheelchair is not the only piece of medical equipment I have. You can probably see in the background I have like a track behind me, and you might have seen in previous videos a box hanging behind me. That's my ceiling lift. That is used to transfer me from my bed to my chair, and my chair to my shower chair, and things like that. That lift cost about $8,000. And the hospital bed that you see behind me was about $6,000. I need that because I can't lay on a regular bed because, again, I don't have the mobility to reposition myself. So the bed allows me to reposition myself. That cost about $6,000. And we have a used wheelchair van, which cost, on average, this is our third one, on average they probably cost about $10,000. A brand new one's about $40,000. A lot of people wonder, well, why can't you just get a used van and then modify it to have a ramp in it? And that's a good question. The reason is the modification itself costs about $20,000, which is about the price of a new van. And they only modify vans that are 5 years old or newer. So obviously finding a wheelchair van is very difficult, and it's important that when I do find one, it's one that's going to last, because if it breaks down, it's going to be a while before I get a new one. And again, none of this equipment was funded by the Nova Scotia government. Some provinces do fund it, and I'm not trying to bash the Nova Scotia government, I'm just trying to tell it like it is, but Nova Scotia does not provide funding. And that negatively affects people with disabilities like myself and a lot of other people with disabilities that I know who've went through similar challenges. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit in this week's video. I know I'm ranting and being a little negative, but I'm trying not to. Anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for this week's educational video, disability series video on Thursday. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.